I'm Peter Obi, and you're watching NoireTV.
Welcome to a special episode of Global Politics Horizon on NoireTV. We are here with His Excellency Mr. Peter Obi, live from Philadelphia. I'm your host, Shama Duru, and I'm co-hosting with
Obina Obilo. Your Excellency, thank you for the time and the opportunity to meet you this morning. My first question is, in the postmortem of the United States elections, we spent a lot of time talking about the divisions and identity politics over bread and butter issues, economic issues. Whereas in Nigeria, we see a lot of conversation around the impact of tribalism in the political conversation. What are some of the lessons that you've gleaned from the elections we've seen in the Western world, in the United States in particular, that you think are influential in your understanding of what we should be doing differently in Nigeria?
Well, thank you for the opportunity of being with the NoireTV again. You know, it's always a pleasure to have the opportunity of being invited. Well, I think it's very clear in the Western world, issues are discussed, issues that concerns the people, about the care of the people. So you talk about, if you look at the American election, it's the economy, it's America first, it's immigration, it's about healthcare, it's about this. While in the third world, or Nigeria in particular, you have primordial issues of tribalism, religion, it's my turn, all sorts of things that adds no value or impact on the common person. So we should learn to abandon those primordial issues and deal with issues that concerns the people, especially the less privileged. Issues of primary health care, issues of education, issues of pulling people out of poverty. How are they going to put food on their table? That is the critical thing. And that's my own politics. Let's talk about the people, especially the poor, in various areas of Nigeria, especially the north. Let's talk about insecurity in the north. Let's talk about how the people can eat.
So why do you think that is? Because when they're protesting, they are protesting those very same issues, the economy, poverty, subsidies, but the discussion turns towards those more primordial issues. Why do you think there's such a difference between what they're protesting, what's affecting them every day, and then what constitutes the majority of the discussion, or what's debated when it's time for elections? Why do you think there's a disconnect there?
Is the elites. Is the elites means of state capture. So they use those primordial things to capture the state. They know that they have nothing to offer. So they don't want to be measured in terms of their competence, in terms of their capacity, in terms of the real measure, background. So what they do is to abandon.
So deflection.
Thank you. Precisely.
Are you running for president again? And also, given the outcome of the last election, do you have any consideration for combining forces with any of the other opposition parties to bolster the case to the Nigerian people to elect you as the next president?
Well, personally, I'm not preoccupied about the next election. I think that's the problem of Nigeria. Because we see politics as transactional, after one election, we are preoccupied by the next election. I'm preoccupied by how does the average Nigerian live today? How do we provide security to the average Nigerian? In terms of working with the other parties and everybody, of course, I always say I'm prepared to work with anybody who is talking about the care of the people. I don't want a combination for power capture or state capture. I want a combination that will allow us to care for the people. And because of this, I always advocate that it is time, even if we are going to continue with the presidential system, to have a quasi-parliamentary system in it. So we have a president that is elected, but let it be like, let me always say, like what is happening in South Africa now. We need to actually do a lot in reorganizing our electoral process and targets. It is critical, where we will have at least parties must win a percentage, and those who are also different parties, let us have a quasi-parliamentary system in our operation. It will help for checks, it will help for better governance. And like I said, look at what is happening in South Africa now, or what is happening in other countries that are doing similar things.
How do we ensure that not only the sanctity of the vote, but people's belief in their vote is maintained throughout the electoral process?
Well, part of what we're going to do, and I know the oppositions are going to do is that we're going to ensure that the next general election reflects the will of the people. Again, we will work hard to amend some aspect of the electoral process and law that will make it impossible for people to rig, and if they do so, there will be punishments. And two, we will now ensure that the people insist on voting, that they have the result from the electoral and polling booths transmitted properly. We're not going to take issue of breakdown of the system again. It will not happen again.
One of the topics that you've brought up, especially as you've gone around the world, really, is the consideration to have Nigerians abroad vote in the general election. How do you see that playing out? And do you have any concerns about undue influence from external parties if that is allowed to happen?
What do you mean by external parties?
So, like in the United States, we have lobbyists and a lot of people who are influencing vote, super PACs and the like. Okay. Do you have any concern about that happening?
For me, that Diaspora Nigerians don't vote is very, very regrettable. If Diaspora Kenyans, South Africans, Ghanaians, everywhere can vote, then there's something fundamentally wrong why they don't want Diaspora Nigerians to vote. These are things we must fight. We claim to be giant of Africa. Why don't we do the things that makes us the giant of Africa? Why are we always shying away from doing the right things? We should be exemplary. And there's nothing in it. It's very easy to do. And I'm championing it every day. And I want Diaspora Nigerians to be advocating for it every day. After all, today, their remittances is about the same thing we earn from oil. They should use their economic contribution to force that they also have some rights. We shouldn't come here to preach them about remittances. We should also preach them about good leadership.
Can you delve deeper into that idea of using remittances to influence what's going on in that.
I mean, federal government people come every day here to urge you to do more for Nigeria.
Right, yeah.
You should advocate and also ask them they should do more for Nigeria by allowing you to vote.
I actually wanted to go back to one of the comments you made about the elite and also the will of the people. In your campaigns as governor, as running for president, how have you been able to make genuine connections with the people, and how do you continue to foster that true groundswell of support that you've seen for you and for your campaign, the obedient movement?
Well, it's about just telling people the truth and trying to tell them the right things. That we cannot continue in the trajectory, in the direction we're going. We must now work hard to see that we're going in the right road, in the right direction. There's a clear designed road for development. You cannot be going to the opposite side and think you're going to get there. You must go on the right road. And that's what we're preaching to people. I'm trying to rekindle the people to have trust in government. Because one of the things you see in Nigeria is that the people are disillusioned. They've lost hope in government. They've lost trust in government. It is critical that you bring that back. And that's what we're doing.
Your Excellency, how must Nigeria position itself for success on the global stage, especially given the changing landscape that you're highlighting? I mean, again, you talk about trust in the Nigerian government, but there's a general feeling of distrust in government across the world. How must Nigeria start to position itself on the global stage to, one, regain that trust and help position the country for success globally?
Well, you have to start with your domestic situation. For you to be respected beyond your own territory, you have to first have a thriving, productive economy where your people can know where the next meal will come from, where there's unemployment for the young ones, where young entrepreneurs, small businesses are thriving. So you have to start by building a very strong domestic economy, law and order, securing your country, and then you start attracting relationships, investors, and then with that you can then be able, you can't go around the globe hand in cap begging and want to earn respect. Nobody respects anybody like that.
And you highlight the point on disinvestment. Given the heightened focus on, there's a heightened focus on governance in Nigeria and across sub-Saharan Africa. But beyond governance, what are the other things that you think that Nigeria in particular must focus on to stem the tide of disinvestment in the country?
It's a very simple thing. If you secure your country and the country is productive, you invest in health, education, and everything, foreign investment or even investments of any sort is like feast and famine. If you put your society, your economy properly, people will come. You'll be profitable for them.
And you highlight again security. You talk about crime. I was having a conversation with my parents. They brought up the same issue about Nigerians abroad who want to travel home, except for the concerns we have with the security apparatus. So, what are some of the internally developed solutions we can think about to help with that situation? Again, I know we've seen folks bring in mercenaries and others from other countries, but we really need homegrown solutions.
Well, quite frankly, I don't Nigerian insecurity can be tackled head on if the government means well. We have all it takes to do so. We need to increase the manpower in the security space. We need to equip them properly. We need to encourage them we need to actually drive that process. But above all, you need to also work on the economy, because that will allow you to pull people out of poverty. It's been shown everywhere in the world. The more you pull people out of poverty, the more you reduce criminality. You can see it all over South America. Those who have not been able to work on their economy have a worse situation than those who have been able to work on their economy.
So you have a very large, boisterous, active, robust community of followers, the Obedience. And at this point, there's another 2.5 years under Tinubu. What would you tell them in terms of practical advice for what they should be doing now? This month, next quarter. What advice would you give them, to just, they say everyone matters. All the choices that we make matter. What advice would you give to them to, I don't want to say not lose hope, but just to make their situation better? What would you tell them as these young people who may not have jobs, who may be in school? What practical advice would you give them?
Well, what I tell them is what I tell every other person. We are the ones who will bring about the change.
Right.
And the only way we can do it is to persevere. It's not to give in.
Right.
It's not to accept.
Right.
But to continue. We might not be in office. Things might not be going the way we want. But the only person that can change it is us. By insisting, persevering, and remaining on course on what we believe is the right thing. And that's all. And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It is wrong. It's not going to work. Because I know we are on the wrong road.
Yeah.
Mr. Peter Obi, it's an honor to have the opportunity to ask you these questions. I have 4 questions which, given our venue here as alumni of the Wharton Business School, mostly revolve around the Nigerian economy. And so I will kick off with the first one here. Nigeria's economy is currently in a perilous position, as is obvious to most. In my judgment, this has largely been driven by the sharp depreciation of the Naira, which is underpinned largely by Nigeria's difficulty in sourcing and earning and building up reserves of hard currency, US dollars and other hard currency, given its lack of exports, its lack of domestic manufacturing, and its over-reliance on imported consumption. It was also rocked by the removal of the petrol subsidy, and the knock-on effect that this removal of subsidy has had on domestic consumption, pricing, given the natural transmission mechanism of higher diesel prices on individual energy generation, using generators to cook food, to open up your store, etc., and the transport costs obviously embedded in most consumer goods in Nigeria, given that most of our cargo moves by road. How would you specifically intervene to ameliorate such challenges and reposition Nigeria's economy? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the
excellent.
Thank you for the honor of being here in Wharton. I think most of the question you answered, you actually answered. The question you asked, you actually answered most of it. But let me, in one few sentences, again emphasize how to deal with this issue. You must have from day one a combination of fiscal and monetary policies that should be aimed at production. If you do that, you're going to, for example, tackle issue of insecurity, and your farmers can go back and invest in agriculture. You're going to support productivity, starting from your support of small and medium businesses, which is the engine of economic activity globally, in any economy, developed and especially developing economy. You deal with that. As you're dealing with that, that will now give support manufacturing. You can have a developing country with less than 10% manufacturing contribution to GDP. You cannot. So you support manufacturing. All this will lead to export, which will allow you to earn additional foreign exchange to stabilize your currency. You already have natural resources like oil that is being stolen. These are things you must stop. You must deal with the issue of oil theft, which is largely by people in government, because ordinary people can't steal oil. So you must deal with that issue. You must deal with the issue of corruption, because people cannot continue to steal public wealth, and again that impacts negatively because it kills entrepreneurship, kills professionalism and hard work. So all this you must simultaneously deal with, and it must start from the leader. And once you start this, cutting cost of governance, dealing with all these issues simultaneously, I didn't say you will do one and abandon the other. You must deal with it simultaneously. As a governor at the subnational level, we did with all the issues simultaneously. That's why we had what we called Anambra Integrated Development Strategy. So we look, what is it that we need to do to say we are on the path of development? Health, education, supporting small businesses, ensuring that we have network of railroads and everything. We were doing with them simultaneously. You can't deal with one and leave the other. So if you tackle it simultaneously, you find out that you start, you're not going to turn it overnight. And people are not expecting you to do so overnight. But they want 100% effort.
Question number 2 that I have for you, sir. In a similar thread, I have heard you make a lot of comments simplifying Nigeria's economic challenges. And you seem to see them as mainly relegated to reducing the fiscal spending of the state, reducing the cost of government, salaries and perks and so on, and the number of sort of government officials and size of governments, as well as reducing Nigeria's already low, one must point out, tax burden of individuals and companies. Many would argue that this misses Nigeria's central problem of having a very, very poorly structured fundamental economic architecture, where we don't produce, where we don't manufacture, we do not export. What would you do to fundamentally restructure Nigeria's economy towards a production state, manufacturing-oriented economy, mostly revolve around, which is producing to meet its internal consumption demand, as well as to diversify its earnings?
I think it's part of the question I've answered before, but let me tell you, I've never simplified Nigerian situation. And I've not talked about cutting salaries. The salaries are low already, so you can't cut it. You're actually going to be talking about increasing it. I didn't mention about cutting salary. I said you need to cut the cost of governance. All the things you said demands that. The cost of governance today in Nigeria is too high and irresponsible compared with the level of your economy. In fact, it's more expensive and higher than the Western world. I've compared it everywhere. I have been a governor. It costs more to keep probably a Nigerian governor than it costs to keep an American governor. I'm sure the biggest state in America is California. I've said it every day. With $4 trillion economy, which is more than 10 times the GDP of Nigeria. But I don't think the governor of California today can use a 6 bulletproof car convoy and remain in office in 1 week. I can go on and tell you what is there that needs to be cut. It is critical, so I'm not simplifying it. I'm just saying simultaneously you need to deal with the physical recklessness and direct your resources to critical areas of development. It is extremely important. You cannot have where you have more money running the office of the president or governor than running the Ministry of Health.
And Your Excellency, the third question that I have for you today, and I know my brother Obi has been giving you some very strong questions as well. Young Nigerians, sir, are abandoning the national project at a phenomenal rate. With Western economies, many of whose local cultures, we've seen sort of what's happening in elections in both sides of the Atlantic in recent years, are very hostile to Black African migrants. These economies seem to be the biggest beneficiaries. What are your plans, sir, or your policy suggestions, Your Excellency, to stem this tide and give young Nigerians some hope in remaining in Nigeria, perhaps? And if not, how do we leverage this now massive diaspora?
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that the diaspora, which is supposed to be brain drain, will eventually be a brain gain, because the knowledge, the exposure, the opportunities they've been able to do when we start the turnaround will help us greatly, like it's done in Asian countries. And I've always advocated that. For the ones that are taking us of risk, some even dying in the high sea and everything, my advice is that we are going to stay back and persevere and ensure that we enthrone a good governance locally that will help for us to now start turning around the economy of Nigeria, which has a lot of opportunities locally for them. I believe there's a sufficient opportunity if we do the right things in Nigeria. Yesterday, I did tell them a story of a young man I met in Yale in 2018 who says to me, I've never been to Nigeria. I want to go. There's a business opportunity. I want to go and do it. I said, have you been there? Were you born there? He said, no, he was born in America. But his both parents are Nigerians. And he came back and went to a village to do farming. Finally asked me, he said, should I invest $10,000? And I said, no, how can this young man, he's never been to Nigeria? And then one day he called me and said, he's having a problem with some people working for him and some people doing this. And I helped him to solve that problem. I called the necessary authorities and helped him to solve the problem. And then the next time I saw him, he said, Mr. Obi, this my company is now valued for $3 million. I said, wait a minute. You just started this thing 2 years ago with less than $100,000. So if I had put in 10% of it, I would have been worth it. So there's so much opportunity that can come, but we need to work to secure the place, make sure there's a rule of law, make sure that we support SMEs where these young ones can try.
So another question we have is, what specifically can people in the diaspora, you mentioned before that, you have some envoy come and we can, hold remittances to Nigeria, but that's at a higher level. What about us as individuals who live in the diaspora? What can we do with our finances, our abilities, what is it practically that we can do, no matter where we are outside of Nigeria, to influence what's going on in Nigeria?
Well, specifically with regards to the electoral process, first is advocacy to the people locally to ensure that when they vote, that they stay and make sure that their vote counts.
So in that you're saying...
That's I'm just giving you, again, in diaspora, to pressure, let's say United States, people in Congress, people at State House, all the possible avenues to put pressure on Nigerian government to ensure that elections reflect the will of the people. We go around the world begging for support. They can use that to pressure and insist on the right thing, because that will bring a lot of value. When you talk about Nigerians living and running abroad, if there's good governance locally, they will stay. So it is to their benefit that they bring about or help us for us to have good governance locally.
So maybe let's even make it even more specific. So let's say, should we be signing up to be election observers? Or you mentioned this example of someone who started a farm, now it's worth $3 million. Would you say, okay, there are some challenges, but those of you who are willing, who understand the landscape, come back and try XYZ business? Like very specific.
Remember what I said before. We need to do the right things. I just used that one as an example to tell you that there's opportunities if the right things are done.
Right.
You can't come and go to farm when it's insecurity. Farmers are being chased out of their farm. So I cannot encourage you to come when there's no where to go. But you can use your time, your local representative here to pressure them to ensure that the right things are done.
I would like to add the fact that you said using officials here to pressure them. Specifically, people want to know in terms of people that want to contribute finances, or be more specific in terms of pressurizing the Nigerian government and the electoral process to ensure that the process, the sanctity of that process is held accountable. I think that's where the question that Chioma is asking. People want to know specifically. I mean, you can write letters. We can write letters to our officials here, and they can just only talk to the Nigerian. People here want to take action. They want to know, do they contribute money? Do they hire lawyers within Nigeria? Do they institute
which organizations?
lawsuits? Do they, what kind of
It's
steps?
still the same thing. They are going to, while they're pressurizing the authorities here, they're also pressurizing their local representative to ensure, because they have a local representative representing you in different states where you come from, to ensure that the right things are done.
Now, on another question, which was a very important question that came up within social media, we have a situation with Very Dakman, who's an internet sensation right now, and Bob Risky, who is an LGBTQ individual who was locked up, supposedly, allegedly locked up by the Nigerian government, but it was found out that he wasn't locked up. He was given a separate prison accommodation as opposed to being locked up. That has caused a lot of conversation in the space where they're saying that different strokes for different folks, where you have poor people get locked up while the rich do not do any prison time. What do you think needs to be done in the case of addressing the Ministry of Interior and the Department of Prisons in Nigeria to address this issue that is of big concern to a lot of young people that are seeing this as two sets of rules for different people.
Well, my position in that is that we must follow strictly the law and make sure that the law, if there's an offense, the people are sanctioned and punished adequately, and if they have to serve, they serve like every other person. That's all I can say about it. If there's anything they've found going wrong, it will be addressed properly.
But it is in the Nigerian space. They have interviewed the people in the Nigerian prisons. They found out that the people in the Nigerian prisons are actually renting out accommodation.
That has to be addressed properly. We must ensure that the right things are done. You see, these are overall misgovernance we're talking about. When we start doing the right things, the rule of law will prevail. It's all part of what I've said. You must deal with the issue of law and order. There should not be different rules for different people. It's happening all over now, where even some of the rules are meant for opposition or for this. All this will be addressed. We're not going to be addressing it in isolation of one person or the other. No. Because this is just one person. It has to be a whole. And that is why I keep saying we must start doing the right things. And when you start doing the right things, it applies with the rule of law. It applies with what is required in the economy, in the health space, in everywhere.
And my final question of the day to you, Your Excellency, sir. What message do you have for the Nigerian diaspora, particularly those of us, those like us in the Wharton alumni community, in how we can use our resources, our connections, our experience, our exposure to help Nigeria move forward and to contribute productively and tangibly to Nigeria's national development?
Well, thank you very much. I think I've mentioned this in the past, but in terms of advocacy, which is critical, and continue to be able to criticize where things are going wrong and support where things are going right, and also see how you can contribute in terms of ideas and everything on good governance. But most importantly, support and persevere in area that will bring and enthrone good leadership.
Your Excellency, we are talking here in Philadelphia, the birthplace of American independence. You're also going to be giving another speech at the University of Pennsylvania and talking to the future leaders, future global leaders. What's the one or two messages that you want to leave with them in your speech, if they take nothing else away from the wisdom that you've shared?
So no, that's simple. Change is possible if only they will sacrifice to bring the change. They are the change. Thank you.